week's episode taught me a very important lesson, which is do not screw with the flow of time, or the flow of time will screw with you. So this week's episode was pretty ridiculous. I didn't even imagine they were going to follow up on the fact that the entire Gintama universe had just been frozen, and they're suddenly watching a Dragon Ball Z battle with Piccolo using a special beam cannon, literally killing both of their friends at the same time. But this week's episode was pretty awesome. It had it all. Aliens, rocket fists, dick jokes, and even some special effects literally come to life, become self-aware, and end up saving the day in this week's episode. This week's episode was goofy as hell, and the comedic timing was pretty damn sharp, although I have to admit, I'm still a new fan of Gintama. I'm only a few episodes into one of the older anime series, and I have to admit that I'm really enjoying it. I just need to get to know these characters a little bit more. Despite that, this week's episode was still really funny with all of the crazy moments where they're constantly trying to fix time, and it doesn't work out. I think one of the biggest jokes definitely was at the beginning, when they actually realized that this big clock that controls all of time actually wasn't broken, it was just running low on batteries. And thus begins the adventure with Gintoki and his friends to try and get a brand new battery, so they decide to go back to the crash site of the aliens, hoping to find something. They find the Shinsengumi police force, who are currently investigating and trying to get all the evidence they can, and that's when they realize that their good friend Hijikata actually does have the battery in his hand, and through a weird series of events, they end up just ripping his arm off, replacing it with this weird Japanese cleaning device, which somehow evolves into a freaking rocket fist. So then they decide to switch that rocket fist with another friend of theirs who happens to be pitching a baseball. This ends up sending the rocket fist flying through multiple buildings right into Shinpachi's sister's face. So this is when all logic goes out the window. So Shinpachi's sister is standing there frozen in time as this rocket fist is literally about to obliterate her face, when suddenly Gintoki decides, well, if we just get rid of some of the FX that are around, which are like the lettering that's around the attack which spell out wham, it actually ends up spelling ham. He then transforms the SFX into a freaking living person by the name of Hamsan, which through another weird, strange series of events ends up getting married to Shinpachi's sister, and then is reluctantly having to save the day at the very end of this episode. What? This show is really freaking funny. I especially love the final scene of the episode where we get to see Gintoki actually doing another press conference. And in last week's episode, I had no idea that that was actually parroting real-life events. When I actually looked up what was going on there with that public apology, that made that scene all the more funnier. Gintoki decides he's going to address the brand new logo and the name of the show, which is basically just Gintama, or whatever really you want to call it. Gintoki himself even mentions, however you want to say it, however you want to pronounce it, that's what it's called. And I think that's pretty freaking funny, because as a guy who watches a lot of anime, I'm surprisingly bad at pronouncing names and all types of things, and I catch a lot of flack for that. But you know what? If you know what I'm talking about, that's okay. And I love the fact that he said I can pronounce it any way I want. I'm just going to call the show Gintama. So this week's episode was a lot of fun. So what's the rundown on this week's episode of Gintama? Just weirdness all around. But still, it's a really funny show. I didn't even expect that they were going to open up with that Dragon Ball Z reference, which was amazing because the dialogue to it was very similar, except that it was just switched around. I especially love how Gengai was begging to be let go, and he's like, I'll never pick boogers again. Very similar to what was going on in Dragon Ball Z. And then there's the whole thing with the battery, which basically makes the whole first episode completely pointless, but still absolutely hilarious, and that's something that this show does really well. Like I said, I'm still kind of new to the world of Gintama. I'm still getting to know a lot of these characters, and this week's episode certainly sort of ran the gamut on the weirdness of the show. I mean, not just the rocket fists, but the weird freaking penguin creature by the name of Elizabeth. Yeah, and the guy who was playing baseball, I completely forgot his name, but still, this was just a really fun, ridiculous episode. As far as the production value goes, just like the last one, just nice, clean, consistent, very colorful. I especially loved the voice actors in the show. I love that there was that one member, I think his name was Hijikata. He was voiced by Zoro, which is always pretty awesome in my book. I love hearing that voice actor. He's a voice actor who, like, never ever changes his voice, though. So all in all, this was just another fun episode of Gintama, which I'm sure longtime fans of the series are definitely going to enjoy. As a new-time fan, I'm definitely enjoying it, too. I really don't know too much about the characters quite yet, but I'm certainly getting a lot of laughs from the show, and frankly, it just makes me feel good. It's just a really fun show to watch. So I'm going to give this week's episode a 4 out of 5, all for the rocket fist badassery. Check it out, my friends. Funny episode. Thank you guys for watching my review. Before you leave, make sure to tell me what you thought about this week's episode of Gintama. Did you have a favorite scene from this week's episode? A favorite funny moment? What do you hope to see from the brand new season? And do you have any other suggestions for me as I'm getting ready to go into the world of Gintama? I think I'm going to avoid the manga, but I think I am going to watch the anime version. Mostly just because I'm an anime guy and that's just the way I do things. So there it is. Tell me in the comments section below. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. That way you can see all of our latest anime and manga reviews. Make sure to also follow us on social media like Facebook and on Twitter. Thank you guys again for watching, and as always, stay dandy, baby!